My name is Victoria Winters. The mistress of Collinwood lies stiffly in her bed, hovering in the narrow world between life and death. Unable to move, unable to communicate. A slow heartbeat and staring eyes, the only indication that life still exists within her. How is she? No change. I wish I could do something. There isn't the slightest movement. I've been watching her eyes, hoping to see a blink or anything. But there's nothing, absolutely nothing. I've never seen such stillness. I'll sit with her for a while. Thanks, I'll be all right. Oh, you've got to have some lunch. I'm not hungry. Please go downstairs and have something. Vicky, I don't want to leave her. Why not? I'll be here, and if anything happens, I'll call you. Because I keep getting the feeling that she's trying to say something to me. Why do you say that? I don't know exactly. I just feel that she's trying to tell me something. Mother. Mother, are you trying to say something to me? Mother. Mother, what are you trying to say?
We are back with Dark Shadows, February 1967. Let's talk about it. It was another very solid month for the soap opera, Dark Shadows. We are on our 9th month of doing this for Dark Shadows, and I've been doing this for almost 9 months, recording this in advance in hopes that I could eventually have so many episodes that I could start posting this consistently. So I don't know when this is actually going to air. But it's been an interesting voyage back to watching Dark Shadows. Like I've talked about before, I have seen this storyline before with Laura Collins. And like I said last time, I am enjoying it more this go-round than I did the first time I watched it. And I liked it the first time I watched it, but I felt like it just dragged on too long. And in February, there were some moments, some weeks where I felt like it was starting to drag. Mostly because Laura keeps saying that she wants to get out of town with David, or she wants to leave with David, and she seems like she wants to do this soon, but that soon doesn't seem to be coming. But let's talk about it. I, for one, on soap operas, don't like when new characters come on and kind of take up all the time. I kind of get it on Dark Shadows with Laura, because she's kind of like the villain of the season, I guess we'll say. But they kind of also added this Dr. Guthrie, who's also kind of been on a lot.
Oh, Roger.
Yes?
The doctor's here.
Oh, what doctor is this?
This is Dr. Guthrie.
Oh, how do you do, Dr. Guthrie?
Mr. Collins, very glad to meet you. Frank Garner suggested that I drop by on this case. This is the way that she's been?
Since it happened, she was talking and seemed to have all of her senses, and then suddenly, without any warning, I found her like this.
Or she was alone then, when she went into this state.
I'm quite certain.
Mrs. Stoddard, can you hear me?
What can we do?
Well, the first thing we can do is to remove her from the influence, to take her as far away from harm as possible. I'm talking about life and death.
Vicky, what shall I do? Your mother didn't realize what was happening. Carolyn, you have no alternative. No, I suppose not. All right. You have my permission to move her.
Good.
Why do you insist on this secrecy?
Because the fewer people who suspect what we know, the easier it will be to gather information. I would like to stay in Collinwood, meet everyone, and see what information I can find. I think that I can be a help to your mother.
Can she hear us?
No?
Her eyes. Do they see us?
Her eyes see only the nameless terror which made her this way.
Doesn't seem as if you've had much luck with Roger.
No, indeed.
What's your next move?
Well, I think I better get to know young David.
May I ask something of you, Dr. Guthrie?
Certainly.
If Roger doesn't stand in your way, and you do get to know David, please be gentle with him.
Oh, of course I will.
You see, he's been made a sort of a pawn recently. He's a very sensitive boy and very easily confused and hurt.
Yes, I understand.
What do you want with him?
There's obviously a deep psychic disturbance here. Now, maybe David is part of it. I'd like a closer look.
What are you going to do?
I think I'll get him to go down to the old house with me. I'd like to see what happens.
Be careful.
That because I just don't like when new characters kind of take center stage. And I actually might have this unpopular complaint when a certain popular guy comes soon. But yeah, this Dr. Guthrie character is kind of being the one to find out more and more about Laura. It fits, don't get me wrong, it does fit that this doctor, who's like a psychologist, and kind of believes in a lot of the supernatural, as we're finding out as we go along here, he fits the story, and I do think they needed a new character to kind of play into this.
Would you like to come here and stay overnight with me?
I guess so. What would we do?
Anything you want?
Miss Winters will probably make a fuss about it, though.
Have you mentioned it to her?
Not yet, but I know exactly what she's going to say. She'll say that I have to stay home and do homework.
I understand that you've seen a ghost.
Who told you?
Miss Winters,
Well, it's true, I have, lots of times.
I believe you.
You do?
Yes, certainly. I believe in the existence of such things.
Well, I have to know whether I should leave Collinwood. If I should go away with my mother. Please, I want to know whether I should be with my mother. Or whether I should leave Collinwood. I want to be with my mother, but I don't want to leave my friends. You're here. You're going to tell me what to do. You're going to tell me what to do. You're going to tell me what to do. That's my picture.
It couldn't just be Victoria always being the one finding things out. So it works, but it's a lot of Dr. Guthrie. So in January, we talked about how Laura looked into the fire and used her supernatural powers to make Elizabeth collapse and kind of go mute, basically. And as Dr. Guthrie comes to check on her to see what's wrong, Elizabeth's condition worsens. She's like catatonic, like in a coma, but with her eyes open. And she has to go to a hospital. Dr. Guthrie sends her to a hospital So Laura wins this battle, getting Elizabeth sent out of Collinwood, and the show has done a very good job of building to this point since the very beginning. We've gotten how Elizabeth has not left the house in like 18 years or something. I wrote it down some. Yes, 18 years since Elizabeth has left the house for whatever reason, and now she's forced to leave the house because of Laura. So that's a really good way of building up Laura as quite the supernatural villain right now, that it's taken 18 years for Elizabeth to leave the house, and now she has to, without a say in it.
Well, why don't you tell me a little bit more about this picture?
It was my mother, and there was a whole lots of fire all around her.
Fire?
Yes, behind her, all around her. It was like she was rising right out of the flames.
Why don't you tell me about your new friend, Dr. Guthrie,
Well, he's very nice, but he's not so smart.
Why do you say that?
Well, because he has to ask so many questions.
Oh, what kind of questions?
Oh, about Collinwood and the old house and everybody who's ever lived here. He was very interested in your picture.
He was?
Yes, a lot.
Do come in for a moment and sit down.
Oh, thank you.
David has told me so much about you.
And me about you. But you're not at all what I expected. For David, if for no other reason. I think you're right. He has very few people in this world. Of course, there's your sister-in-law, Mrs. Stoddard.
Yes. She's raised a child of her own, of course, and I don't think that she had the patience to start all over again with mine.
You sound as if you're not too fond of her.
Well, I tried very hard to be fond of her in the beginning, but she wouldn't let me.
And such a strange illness. What do you make of it?
Well, I'll leave making anything of it to you, after all. That's your business.
I've never seen anything like it. Not in this world.
Are there any other worlds?
There might be.
What an interesting observation. We must discuss it sometime.
Haven't you ever considered the possibilities of another world?
Well, let me put it this way. I feel that the possibilities of things in this world are so infinite that it's difficult to conceive of another.
So this kind of sets up Victoria versus Laura for a while, where Victoria is trying to prolong with what Elizabeth wanted in keeping David away from Laura. So we get some little arguments between Victoria and Laura about what David can and cannot do. And so they've kind of set up this supernatural story here where it's kind of like Josette is trying to warn the family about Laura, and it's kind of like a supernatural story of good versus evil is what we're kind of getting. Josette being, I guess, the good ghost, and Laura being this spirit that comes around every 100 years, and it's kind of like has supernatural powers or whatever.
David, where are you going?
Hi, Miss Winters.
I asked you a question. What's that in your hand?
Oh, it's nothing.
David, where are you going at this time of night? You're supposed to be getting ready for bed.
I'm going to the cottage.
You are not going to the cottage.
Now look what you've done.
David, your pajamas. Where are you going?
I'm going to stay overnight at my mother's.
Now, we're not going to argue about that, are we?
Indeed, we are not.
I can go, can't I?
Of course you can.
Well, he really should have asked for permission.
He did. And I gave it.
I was beginning to worry. I thought perhaps you changed your mind and weren't coming.
Miss Winters tried to stop me.
Really?
Miss Winters just wanted to discuss it. I probably should have mentioned it to her in advance.
Yes, well, she would have said no then.
David, Miss Winters doesn't say no to your father. She's your governess. She's hired to direct your studies, that's all.
Sometimes I think she's trying to direct everything I do.
You're here, Josette. You're somewhere in this room. What do you want? Leave him alone. He's mine. As long as I hold him in my arms, you have no power over him. Stay away, Josette. You see, I told you. I told you it's useless to interfere. Now leave us. And never come back.
But I like how they've set that up with Josette versus Laura. There's also a later thing where David decides to spend the night with Laura. Laura continues to get her way despite the warnings from Elizabeth and Victoria, because Roger is allowing Laura to be with David. And during that night, when David falls asleep, the ghost of Josette appears, and Laura kind of gets Josette to back off. But Dr. Guthrie gets this big idea to have a séance and try and get Josette to come out and actually speak to them, or speak to them through someone.
Roger, please. I want my son. I need him. Give him to me now. Please, you have no idea how much I need him. Let me have him before it's too late. Please, Roger.
You'll have him, Laura, soon enough.
No, I want him now, immediately.
That's impossible.
It's not impossible. All you have to do is give the word.
I can't give it. Not now.
Roger, please. I beg you, I don't have much time.
You keep saying that. What do you mean you don't have much time? It doesn't make sense.
How are you going to find out what caused David's dream?
By contacting someone, someone who may be able to tell us.
I don't understand.
Well, you've felt all along that you've been receiving messages, clues, whatever, from the spirit of Josette Collins, haven't you?
I feel fairly certain I have.
But so far, all she's been able to give you are hints. That's probably because she lacks the power to do more.
What do you intend to do?
Give her more power.
But how?
By not waiting for her to contact us, but by contacting her as directly as possible.
In a séance?
Yes.
What's this about the séance?
Dr. Guthrie thinks that he can contact Josette.
Or someone who may be able to help us.
I don't know. I'm not sure I even believe in that sort of thing.
Well, I understand that you saw Mrs. Stoddard the day she collapsed. In fact, just a few minutes before.
Why, yes, that's true.
I wonder if you could tell me anything about her state of mind.
No, not really. She seemed her usual self.
Why did she come down here to see you?
Just to see if I was comfortable.
Nothing more than that?
Nothing more than that.
Mrs. Collins, I wonder if you'd accept an invitation.
To what?
To a séance.
A séance?
Yes. Do you know what that is?
An effort to contact the dead. How absurd.
Will you come?
No.
I'm sorry. I thought it might be extremely interesting for you. Are you sure I can't persuade you?
Positive.
Think it over, please.
Who will be there?
There'll be those who are invited, and of course, those who are the uninvited. You want to know something ironic, Frank?
What's that?
I'm frightened too.
Frightened of what? Failure?
Yes. And of success.
I don't get it.
If we succeed tonight, we may unleash a force so strange, so mystifying, so incomprehensible to the human mind that we may not be able to control it.
Guthrie invites Laura to the seance, but she declines. So I think it's just Roger, Victoria, Guthrie, and Carolyn at the seance. And when it starts, it seems the spirit is there.
Spread your fingers and make a circle of fingers by touching the fingers of those next to you. We must keep this circle unbroken at all times. That's good. Now, the electricity of thought has been set in motion so that it will flow through us, making our minds as one. Let us begin to concentrate. We must repeat over and over in our minds, Josette Collins. Josette Collins. Josette. Josette.
There we have Victoria like kind of moaning that the ghost has arrived maybe inside of her, but then Laura kind of interferes, stopping it from happening.
There's a presence here. There's a definite influence.
And Laura joins the seance to see what's going on. And we get a nice shot again of Josette's spirit, or the ghost of Josette, walking out of the portraits of Josette. And she goes into Vicky. Victoria starts speaking French.
Come back to us, Josette. Come back to us.
Il y a danger ici.
She's speaking French.
Vicky doesn't know French.
It must be Josette.
Il y a des pierres, du milieu, des feux pendant les siècles. Il y aura un autre feu prochainement. Les flammes toucheront le ciel. Les flammes consomment tous. Il y a une présence endiable. Il y a quelqu'un qui va détruire. Cette personne s'appelle... Cette personne s'appelle... Cette personne...
But then she faints, and Guthrie tries to like translate it to saying that there is evil in this house, but before Victoria could get a name out, it seems that force may have made, that force being Laura, may have made Victoria pass out during the seance. So that was a nice supernatural scene. The seance was good television. They've been heightening the supernatural and I guess the scariness of it all more and more. Each month I've been talking about this, and I enjoyed that very much. I remember when I watched some of the documentary about Dark Shadows, Dan Curtis was talking about how they were on the brink of cancellation anyway, so they might as well kind of just start throwing all their supernatural stuff out there rather than just doing a little bit at a time. And we've seen them doing this here over these last few months of Dark Shadows, and I've enjoyed it.
Who's in here? Who is it? I know that somebody's in here.
I startled you, didn't I? I'm sorry.
What do you want?
I just came by to see if you were all right. I didn't mean to waken you.
I didn't hear you come in.
You know something, Vicky?
What?
I had a feeling about you. A feeling that it's not good for you to be in this house. That perhaps you might be better off if you left. That you might be happier and safer away from Collinwood.
Why?
Oh, I can't explain. It's just a feeling I had.
Some other little things is, we had Sam kind of get burnt in that fire. First, Sam describes how painting the portrait, how he felt like he had to do it. That's once again Josette, the good side, trying to use Sam to use that painting to warn the family. And then he talks about how he thinks Laura's the one that put a stop to it and made him burn his hands, the evil side of it. So once again, playing into that Josette versus Laura, which I have enjoyed a lot. And we also have Burke, who has continued to believe Laura, because they seem to have this little rendezvous type history together. But even Victoria's getting through to Burke about Laura as well.
Well, there are an awful lot of things about Laura Collins that are questionable. No, they're downright mysterious.
I wish you'd be a little specific.
All right, I'll give you the facts. Well, she came back here after many years without a word to anyone.
But she's been ill for a long time. You know that. She's well now. And she has a mother's natural longing to see her son. What's wrong with that?
Well, that part of it is fine. I'm the first to be in sympathy with it. But an awful lot of strange things have happened since her arrival.
Strange things are always happening up at Collinwood.
But these have to do with her. Now, there's Sam Evans and his painting. And then there was the fire at his house when he burned his hands. And what about that fire in her apartment in Phoenix? That body was identified positively as Laura Collins. And don't forget that she was the last person to see Mrs. Stoddard before she went into the trance, and she never even mentioned it.
That's all I need. You listening to her. It's bad enough, this awful influence she has over David.
I'm very fond of David. And if you would explain a few things that have been happening around here since you came back, then no one would object if you took the boy away.
Do you feel anything that is any different than someone just appealing for your help? What's the matter? What is it?
Don't work on me, Laura.
Burke, think of the future. Think only of you and me.
In the end, though, Laura ends up destroying the tape that Guthrie recorded during the séance, and Laura has decided she needs to take care of Guthrie, because Guthrie is kind of the force stopping her from getting David at this point.
They decided to bury that woman who died in the fire.
Something they should have done long ago.
I'm sure they'd agree with you. You see, when they went to the vault to find the body, it was gone.
Gone. Go away and leave me alone.
What do you know about that body being gone?
I'm warning you. I want to be left alone. I'm tired of your questions and your accusations.
I haven't accused you of anything.
And I'm not going to warn you anymore.
Warn me? About what?
Nothing.
You sound as though you're threatening me. Exactly what are you threatening to do?
Are you going to leave me alone?
No, I don't think I am. Vicky. Vicky!
So she tries to do the same thing she did to Elizabeth, stare into the fire, use her powers to make Dr. Guthrie collapse. Guthrie does collapse, however, David ends up interrupting Laura at that point in time while she's staring into the fire.
Got to snap out of it.
I can't. I can't.
Mother? Mother? Mother, are you all right? Mother, what's the matter? Mother!
Oh, David.
What happened?
So her spell doesn't take full effect on Guthrie, and Guthrie ends up confronting Laura, basically telling her he realizes she has some powers, some supernatural powers.
There is one thing that's very much beyond me. Comprehension of you. What kind of a person goes into your work? Meddling into things that should best be left alone.
I'm sure that you know a great deal about those things.
Complicated for me.
Well, complicated things are sometimes the most fascinating. For instance, you.
Am I complicated? I never would have thought it.
Very. And I'm beginning to know all about you.
Oh. Just what are you beginning to know?
I think that you have some sort of power or influence.
Really? What kind?
A very, very special kind. I know what you are.
What am I?
You're someone who possesses a force far stronger than anything I've ever seen in this world. And when I'm sure what it is, I'll tell you. And everyone else as well.
Will you? Will you really?
So, I mean, like, I do think the character of Guthrie is important to the story because he's kind of the person standing up to Laura at this point. So it fits. It all fits, and that's why I think this has been another solid month of Dark Shadows. The final episode of February was Guthrie getting Carolyn to get Joe's help. So Carolyn ends up interrupting Joe and Maggie, so we're still getting that kind of triangle. It's not on very often at all, the Maggie, Joe, and Carolyn triangle, but it is still a thing, as we see here, Carolyn interrupting those two when they're together to get Joe's help. Now,
Wow. Speaking of Collinwood.
Hi, Maggie.
Hi.
Joe.
Hi, Carolyn. You want to join us?
Thanks.
Any news of your mother?
She's still the same. No sign of a change in her condition. The doctors are really baffled.
Well, what about Dr. Guthrie?
He may be our only hope. Look, Maggie, would you mind terribly if I spoke with Joe alone? It's very important.
No, not at all. Do you want me to move, or will you?
No, we'll go over to a table. I promise I won't keep him long.
I don't care how long you keep him. Just so I get him back.
Now, Guthrie didn't tell Carolyn what he wanted Joe's help for. He tells both Carolyn and Joe together that he wants Joe to help him dig up a body because he's believing in reincarnation here when it comes to Laura. That and this is because the body in Phoenix disappeared. That body that was burned down in Laura's apartment in Phoenix has gone missing. And so he is now believing in this theory in reincarnation where Laura is concerned. So overall, I've enjoyed how much supernatural elements we've gotten out of February. This was a February sweeps. They did do sweeps back then on soap operas. And it's a solid sweeps, even though I think January was the better month for sure. But I really like the supernatural story. And Laura's a very interesting character. You know, we get the Phoenix folklore of the bird that bursts into flames and is reborn. And we're getting the reincarnation side of it. We're getting Laura set up as this spirit that like comes around every 100 years and has to basically play out the same scenario, I guess. So it's like Laura is this villain, but she's also kind of like this force that she's kind of like this the spirit that comes around every 100 years. It's kind of not her fault, really, if you think about it. But they've made Laura a scary kind of character. Her showing up to the séance kind of dressed in black was a good moment, a great scene. I really enjoyed that scene. They've made Laura a very scary villain for sure. She went and visited Vicky during the night at one point in Vicky's bedroom, and then when they're talking, after they're finished talking, Laura just disappears from the room. So they've set Laura up as this really good supernatural character who can be borderline scary at times. So props to the show with the character of Laura. I think this is a very underrated story for Dark Shadows because, you know, we're getting really close to old Barnabas. Too old, let me talk in the microphone. We're getting very close to Barnabas showing up, and he kind of takes over the show completely, really, let's be real, for better or for worse, which I will get to those months when we get there. But I'm very happy with February. It wasn't as good as January, it just wasn't, but it was another solid month of Dark Shadows. I rated it an 80, gave it like a B minus. Last month was my highest rating yet for Dark Shadows. I gave it an 84, basically like a B. It wasn't quite as good as that, so I had to give it a B minus. Still good, but not as good as last week. So I gave it an 80. That brings the average to a 78.33. That's the highest average for Dark Shadows yet. The average keeps being brought up in recent months from this Laura story. And the climax of that story with Bill Malloy and Matthew and all of that's when the show really started to ramp up the good stuff. But yeah, February's good. The Laura story, I think, is good television. It does drag some weeks, it just does. But that's like all soap operas. They drag at some point. But yeah, overall, I'm still happy with Dark Shadows. This month was an 80, and the average is a 78.33.
How you feel about reincarnation?
Reincarnation? I don't know. I haven't given it much thought. As far as I know, you only live once, at least here on Earth.
Well, can you envision an afterlife here in this world? Do you think it's possible that people can be born over and over again? In other words, reincarnated?
Not really.
Well, that may make it a little difficult for you to accept what I'm going to ask you to do.
And what is that?
I want you to help me open a grave.